Hello, and welcome to the Chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 6 of Chalk Talk, brought to you by the Painted Lines. I'm your host, Shane Half, and you can follow me on Twitter at @halfandhalf_TPL. I'm joined tonight by the best co-host in the game. You've seen him on the Tough Cover Pod. It's Mark Henry Jr. You can follow him on Twitter at @MarkHenryJr_. Mark, how are you doing today?
I'm pumped up. We have college football this weekend. It's the perfect appetizer for an NFL full slate next weekend. I'm pumped up for football season.
Absolutely. And OU plays their first game this Saturday. We get NFL football a week from tomorrow. It's a great time to be a football fan. And we've got a great show lined up for you guys tonight. We're going to react to the Eagles' 53-man roster, and we're going to break down some NFC over-under on win totals. But before we get to that, this podcast is live on YouTube. If you're watching, be sure and drop us a comment. We'd love to interact with you on the show. It's also on Apple Podcasts, so please follow, rate, review, and share the podcast. It really helps us out. So, Mark, before we get into all that, the Eagles made a landscape-changing move just a couple of days, totally out of left field. They have traded for a new quarterback. Quarterback controversy in Philadelphia? Now, obviously, we don't think that, but I'd like to get your reaction to the Gardner Minshew trade. What do you think?
You know, when you have a QB factory, you have to keep the line moving. You have to keep it going. You can't stay stagnant. No, I'm just joking. Realistically, my main takeaway, and I think you'll feel a similar way judging off of some of your tweets, a lot of teams should have done the trade that the Eagles did for Gardner Minshew. I think Gardner Minshew, if you take out the rookie quarterbacks, because I don't really think they count as backup quarterbacks because they're kind of the starter in waiting. If you take out those situations and you take out, a Mariota in Las Vegas, I don't know how many backup quarterbacks I'd rather have than Gardner Minshew, especially with Jalen Hurts. You get a guy that can back you up that still has some mobility, and you won't have to completely change the offense if Hurts were to get hurt or struggle. But then there's a negative spin way to look at it. Kind of. I know you have been very critical of the Joe Flacco signing. I've been right there with you. It was a waste of money. It was a waste of a signing. And I kind of am of two minds about it. There's one way where you look at it where it's like, wow, it is egregious to waste the money you did on Flacco and then trade for Gardner Minshew. But I almost respect it a little bit if the mindset is, wow, we made a mistake with Joe Flacco. He is not a good enough backup. We need to bring someone else in. I guess I can't kill them if they're admitting a mistake. Do you get where I'm coming from there a little bit?
Yeah, I guess we'll see who the backup is when we hit week one. I'm pretty sure it's still going to be Flacco. For me, I think it's a great move. It's a cost-controlled backup for 2 years. Makes like $900,000. He has decent starting upside. I don't know why the Jags would take this trade. I mean, you look at, rookie quarterbacks struggle. Rookie quarterbacks hit stretches where, the game is just flying around them and they start to ingrain bad habits. And it's pretty invaluable in that moment as a coach to be able to pull him off the field and say, hey, Trevor, you're our guy, but this is going sideways and I'm sitting you down. This is for you. We don't want, you got to get your head back right and we'll put you back out there next week. Who are you doing that with now? I mean, I don't understand the move from the Jaguars' point of view, but I think every team in the NFL should have been willing to give up a sixth for this guy. Notably, I don't know why the Dallas Cowboys didn't do this. The Cowboys view themselves as contenders for this season. As ridiculous as I think that is, that's how they view themselves. And Dak Prescott is coming off of a major injury. He's been banged up in the preseason, and their backup is Cooper Rush. The guy's thrown 3 passes in an NFL game. So I love the move. Honestly, I think about every team in the NFL should have made it. So the only thing I would say is it would have been better if watching Washington State tape, the scouting department wouldn't have come away thinking Andre Dillard was a top 10 player in that draft. It would have been better if they would have realized that Gardner Minshew was a better quarterback than Clayton Thorson and just drafted him to begin with. But that's water under the bridge. I'm pleased with the move.
And just touching on the Dallas point you made there, because I think it's a great point. I mean, when you have Dak Prescott, who clearly has had some issues, not just with the injury he had last year, but with his shoulder, and they cut Ben DiNucci, they cut Garrett Gilbert, and their only backup is Cooper Rush. I think they might have picked someone up today. I can't remember who it is, but Jane Slater said that she was told that the Cowboys never even inquired about Gardner Minshew, which is just crazy to me that someone didn't swoop in there. I mean, I mentioned a couple teams, Dallas, Cincinnati with Joe Burrow, with the injury he's coming off of, a Pittsburgh with Ben Roethlisberger's, longevity questions that have to be raised, and you have Dwayne Haskins as the backup. There's plenty of places that really, really are going to kick themselves if their quarterback goes down that they didn't make this trade. And that's kind of my main takeaway for the Eagles. I do think Minshew by October is the backup. I don't know how he couldn't be over Flacco. I've seen it. I know he had some flashes in the preseason. I've seen enough out of Flacco last year with the Jets, this year in small sample sizes in the preseason with the starters. I've seen enough. That guy's not a backup. That guy's not a guy who should be playing meaningful football in any scenario. And which makes the contract even worse, obviously. But I'm optimistic about it. But obviously there's the other side of people who think Jalen Hurts is in trouble and Minshew's coming to take his job. So there's definitely, a happy medium there. I think he's a great backup, and I think it's good to have in case Jalen struggles or in case Jalen gets hurt, but I don't think he's overtaking Jalen Hurts.
And I saw people taking exception to that. Why would you put Jalen Hurts in this scenario? I mean, you're not putting Jalen Hurts in any situation. And even if you were, Jalen Hurts doesn't care. He's not this mentally weak person that's going to fold to that, but he's a starter. Everybody knows it, but say Jalen Hurts goes down. When you say backup quarterback doesn't matter, the Eagles aren't competitors anyways. But what does matter is not throwing away a year of development of Devontae Smith, of Jalen Reagor, of Quez Watkins. It's not just about your quarterback. It's about a team being able to function and learn what you can learn if disaster strikes. And so the Eagles are a better team with Minshew on the roster than they were with him not on the roster. And a 6th-round pick is nothing to get that cost-controlled backup for 2 years at least.
Absolutely, yeah. It's basically, you just look at it, he's taking Nick Mullen's spot on the roster, who was terrible in the preseason. So they love keeping 3 quarterbacks. They always keep 3 quarterbacks. So they were always going to keep 3 quarterbacks. So I'm happy that third guy is not Nick Mullens. It's very much a huge improvement to Gardner Minshew, who I view as a top 5 backup quarterback.
So let's take a look at the Eagles' 53-man roster now. And I went and tallied it back up. We hit 46 of the 53 on our 53-man roster projection. I'm going to give us 47 because obviously the Gardner Minshew trade hadn't even happened, and I obviously would have kept him. But, that's water under the bridge. So we keep 3 quarterbacks, and they're not listed in any particular order here, I hope. We've got Joe Flacco, Jalen Hurts, Gardner Minshew. They go a little light at running back. We only keep 3 running backs, Kenny Gainwell, Miles Sanders, and Boston Scott, although it is notable that Jordan Howard is currently on the practice squad. So I fully expect them to elevate him back to the 53 once Tyree Jackson goes to IR.
I hope that that's not the case, but you're probably right. I would love to see them, sign someone who got cut. There were a lot of running backs who had felt like we're kind of surprised that they got cut today. Or yesterday, sure. I should say. So yeah, I would love to see them take a look.
I would get rid of Howard in a heartbeat. I just don't think they're going to. And Howard on a practice squad doesn't make sense. He's not a guy you can develop. And so I'd imagine he is back on the 53 pretty soon.
Makes sense.
The Eagles go light at wide receiver. We expected him to keep 6. They keep 5. You have Devonta Smith, Jalen Reagor, Quez Watkins, Greg Ward, and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. And Travis Fulgham does not make the roster. Not only does Travis Fulgham not make the roster, he makes it to the practice squad, which tells me, if you're not following along at home, the Eagles' leading receiver from a year ago is not good enough to make literally any roster in the NFL. And so if you want to look at the Eagles last year, if you want to say, why did Carson Wentz fail? There's a lot of reasons for that. If you want to say, why did Jalen Hurts not look good? There's reasons for that. Number one reason is that wide receiver 1 from a year ago is not good enough for any single NFL team. So take that for what it's worth. I knew you had a reaction to Fulgham being cut. You didn't like that. Talk about that for a second. What are your thoughts?
It's not even like I'm crazy about Fulgham. I'm done with J-Jaw. And I get that J-Jaw plays on special teams, but I just think it's crazy given what we've seen for J-Jaw to make it over Fulgham when they're theoretically similar receivers. So I really I would have rather seen Fulgham make the roster just because obviously he had that 3-4 week stretch where he looked like an NFL receiver, even if, I don't even necessarily buy into that. But I buy into it a lot, a whole hell of a lot more than anything I've seen from J-Jaw.
Yeah, I mean, I'm over J-Jaw. He needs to go. He is nothing. He's in the Andre Dillard camp for me. Total waste of a pick. It's time to cut bait and move on. But the Eagles are going to give it one more run. At tight end, they keep 4. Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert, Tyree Jackson, which we talked about. He has to make the 53, and then he can be put on IR so he can come back midseason. And then they keep Jack Stoll instead of Richard Rodgers, which was a little surprising to me. But Rodgers is another one of those guys that I would imagine has been cut and told, hey, we're going to bring you right back. So I'd be pretty surprised if Rodgers is not on the week 1 roster.
Agreed.
So at offensive line, they keep 10. Brandon Brooks, Landon Dickerson, Andre Dillard, Jack Driscoll, Nate Herbig, Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey, Jordan Mailata, Isaac Seumalo, and Brett Toth. The biggest surprise to me here is that Landon Dickerson was activated and brought on to the 53-man roster. If he had been on the NFI list going into the season, he would have had to miss the first 6 weeks. That tells me the Eagles expect Landon Dickerson to not only be ready to play, but to be someone they want to get on the field sometime in the first 3 to 5 weeks of the season. And so I don't know what that means. I don't know if he's being looked at as the backup center. I don't know if he's being looked at as the left guard, that he's going to take Isaac Seumalo's job. But that'll be an interesting situation to monitor as he becomes healthy and available.
It'll definitely be interesting. And I wouldn't be shocked to see him considered for either of the positions you mentioned. I mean, I don't know that he'll be the starting left guard, especially right away. But I think we've seen, and basically there's no knocks on Dickerson's ability on the offensive line. Basically, like if Landon Dickerson was a clean, healthy prospect, how high would he have went in the draft? Probably, top 15 easily. I think he would have went higher than Elijah Vera-Tucker. So I think that there's no questions about him if he's healthy. So if he's healthy, I would like to see him play as much as possible. But Dibes asked where he wants us to see Dickerson play. Backup center, obviously, if Kelsey were to get hurt, I would not want to see anyone but Dickerson in there at center. And I kind of feel like if Seumalo, I do kind of feel like Seumalo deserves the chance to be the starter at left guard. And so if he struggles or he gets hurt or Brandon Brooks gets hurt, I kind of am starting to get to the point where I would like to see Landon Dickerson as the primary backup to almost all 3 interior alignment positions.
Yeah, I'm the same. As long as he's healthy, and I don't want to rush this guy onto the field, but as long as he's healthy, as long as he feels comfortable, to me, he's your top backup at all 3 interior offensive line positions. You could make an argument for him to start at left guard over Isaac Seumalo. He certainly has higher upside than Isaac Seumalo. But there's a lot to be said for that chemistry between, a left tackle, left guard, and a center. And so you've got Jordan Mailata out on the edge. Jason Kelsey can play next to anybody, but do you really want to throw that curveball to Mailata week 1 or week 2 or week 3 when he hasn't practiced with Dickerson? And beyond that, you just have, Isaac Seumalo is going to be on this team down the road. Brandon Brooks is not. Brandon Brooks might be gone after this year, maybe after next year, but do you really want to bench Seumalo this year and then make him a starter again next year? What's that going to do to his confidence? So I would rather see Dickerson as that primary backup at all 3 spots, ease his way in. And you hate to say it, but Brandon Brooks is probably not making it through this season. He just hasn't. He hasn't shown that longevity. And so Dickerson's going to get his shot to play. I just don't necessarily want it to be at Seumalo's expense.
Yeah. Dibes has a comment here. Can we all rejoice that Pryor is not on that final roster? Not only is he not on the final roster, we got Indy to swap a 6th-round pick for a 7th-round pick to take him. I don't know if that's just a Pryor and Wentz are buddies thing. Like, I actually don't know. Or if the Colts are just looking for an O-lineman, and I don't. And
they definitely need some offensive line help. They definitely need some O-tackle help. That's not who you want it to be. Dibe says, coming in on YouTube here, and again, if you're watching, drop us a comment, but Dibe says, the thing for me about Dickerson is his run blocking. He's a terrific run blocker like Mailata. The offense needs to build from the ground up with the running game to help Jalen Hurts. And I agree with that. He is definitely a better run blocker than Isaac Seumalo. I mean, and to be fair, he's a better all-around player than Seumalo. But it's not just about that skill either. I'm very interested to see him on the field. And I even wonder if you'll see like some load management in games as the NFL moves to a longer season. If you're in a game and you're in the fourth quarter and you're down by 3 touchdowns, why keep Brandon Brooks out there? Put Landon Dickerson out there. Let him play some. Why keep Fletcher Cox on the field? Put Marlon Tuipulotu out there. Get him some reps. And so I'm interested to see if there is a little bit more rotation than normal, especially for a team like the Eagles, who has made it very clear that they're about retooling this roster. And as we get into the defensive line here, we kept guys like Taron Jackson and Marlon Tuipulotu, who probably didn't deserve to make this roster, but Howie Roseman even intentionally talked about, we want to keep these young guys, and they may not be ready yet, but we want to develop them, and this is the way we can make sure that happens. And so I like seeing that attitude shift from an organization that forced Alshon Jeffrey back onto the field last year, and I hope that it's something that sticks. But the Eagles went deep at the defensive line. They keep 5 defensive ends, 4 defensive tackles, pretty much what we expected, with the exception of keeping Taron Jackson at defensive end, and they kept Marlon Tuipulotu instead of T.Y. McGill, although T.Y. McGill went on to the COVID list right before cut down. Mm-hmm. So I think he makes the roster if that doesn't happen. And I mean, you don't want anybody to get COVID, but in terms of timing, that's not a bad thing for the Eagles that they're able to protect him without having to use a roster spot there.
Just a random question. Have you heard less about a guy on the Eagles defense than Ryan Kerrigan? I feel like I haven't heard I literally just did a Twitter search for his name. I feel like I haven't heard a single word about Ryan Kerrigan, like a blurb from training camp or preseason. Like I haven't, I'm sure he didn't play in the preseason, but I didn't see a single thing about him. It's interesting.
Yeah. I haven't heard hardly anything about Kerrigan. I'm definitely interested to see how he's used.
Yeah, I mean, he was still good per snap last year. If you look at his PFF grades and stuff, and you look at his stats against the NFC East, he's been an NFC East killer his whole life. Like, people have always joked, like, oh, he's an Eagle killer. But if you look at his stats against the Cowboys and Giants, I'm pretty sure they're, like, even better per game. So, like, he kills the whole division. I was excited about that signing just because it seemed like such a low risk, high reward possibility of a signing, even for like a Chris Long type thing where you bring in a guy and shuffle him in and out. So I just haven't heard anything about him. It's interesting.
Yeah. And so we move on to linebacker, where the Eagles also went heavy. They keep 7 linebackers. They have Jannard Avery, Sean Bradley, TJ Edwards, Patrick Johnson, Alex Singleton, Davion Taylor, and Eric Wilson. That's a little heavier than I thought they would go. I think we projected 6, and we left Patrick Johnson off the list. But in that same thrust of keeping rookies, every rookie but one made this roster, and so Patrick Johnson makes the team.
I have a fun little stat to talk about later with Alex Singleton, but that's all I have to add about linebacker.
All right, teaser. So don't tune out if you're watching live here. And don't skip ahead if you're listening later either. So at cornerback, they keep 5. They keep Avonte Maddox, Zach McPherson, Steven Nelson, Josiah Scott, and Darius Slay. We thought they might keep 6 there, but they go a little lighter. At safety, they keep Marcus Epps, Anthony Harris, Rodney McLeod, who again doesn't necessarily mean he's going to play week 1, but it means he will likely play within the first 6 weeks of the season. And then Kevon Wallace. And I was a little surprised that they cut Elijah Riley. He's a big special teams contributor for them, but I saw he made it back through to the practice squad. And then for the specialists, it was never in doubt. That's the only 3 we had. And so Elliott, Lovato, and Spas all make the roster.
Where are you at on Kevon Wallace going into this year?
I have no idea. I mean, I was pretty high on him at the draft. I really liked the pick. I like the versatility he brings, but we never really saw him much last year, and I haven't heard a lot about him this year. I need to just see him. So I can't say I have a take necessarily. I think the potential's there, but I just need to see him on the field in action.
Yeah, I liked him as a draft guy, and we just haven't really seen enough to make any really sort of declarative statement. But would he be? Is it him or Epps starting if McLeod's hurt for week 1?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think probably Epps because they've done that before, but I don't know. Marky Mark pops in and it says 7 linebackers is a lot, but I believe Davion Taylor will go on IR. Yeah, I'm not sure what the status of Taylor is in regards to injury. Do you know anything, Mark? Have you heard anything on his injury?
I don't, but we have someone here who might know something about it. So let's add him to the stream. Our first guest to Chalk Talk here.
Oh man, what's first? Is this the first?
Yeah, you're the first. You're the first outsider.
No, man, great show of always. I just wanted to chime. I've been dying to talk about the Eagles roster. Of course, you know that. But yeah, you guys touched on everything. My question to you guys is where I struggle as an Eagles fan versus a football fan is legit this roster. And what I mean by that is this team is built in all the right ways of a playoff contender. They're healthy on the offensive line. Defensively on the defensive line, they've got they're returning everybody from one of the best in the league last year. Josh Sweat's ready to take the next step. You've got Milton Williams, who's ready to take a next step. You've got, even Javon Hargrave, who thrived there in that second half of the year and has done nothing but impress in this training camp. Then you've got the cornerbacks in the secondary, which we'll see. We'll see how that all plays out. If Jalen Hurts is legit, and I know that's a big if, but they're built on the trenches. They're 100% built on the trenches with their offensive line, their defensive line. My question to you guys is where do you go as an Eagles fan, as an NFL fan, in the sense of that? I had Mark Schofield on my show the other day. This team could legit win anywhere between 8-7 wins to 10, 11 wins. And I see a lot of guys on this roster that can stay healthy. If they take that next step, there is reason to be optimistic. And as we get closer and closer to this season, I keep trying to pump the brakes, pump the brakes, pump the brakes. Any thoughts on that, guys?
Yeah, I mean, so the Eagles, the offensive line, the offensive line and the defensive line are obviously, if they stay healthy, they're top units in the league. It comes down on the offense to major questions at quarterback and wide receiver. And then on the defense, it's in the secondary. And when you throw on top of that, new head coaches, first-time play callers on both sides of the ball, this is one of the most high variant teams that, can we say the word variant? Does that trigger people now with all the COVID stuff going around? I take it back. No new variants, but this is the most high variance team.
I'm an MCU fan, so when you say variant, you're talking Loki, you're talking about the multiverse. There's a lot to talk about. All right.
Yeah. But I mean, I think it's a very high variance team. I don't see the scenario where the Eagles are a 4-win team. I don't really see the scenario where they're a 12-win team. I think it's in the middle. I think 7, 8, 9 wins, and we're going to get into some NFC win totals here in a few minutes. But I think those are your likely scenarios. I mean, if Jalen Hurts proves he's a franchise quarterback, then if you have a true franchise quarterback, you're in the top half of the league because half the teams in the league don't have one. And so it ultimately all comes down to Hurts and the play calling on both sides of the ball for me.
Yeah, I've said many times, I've guaranteed this on this podcast, on every podcast that's had me on as a guest, and the radio show that's had me on as a guest. This Eagles team is too good in the trenches to win 4 or 5 games. Teams that are this good in the trenches on the offensive and the defensive line don't win 4 or 5 games, and I get the rebuttal to that would be that we won 4 last year, but the long laundry list of reasons that we won 4 games last year is very long. We don't have the time to even go through all the reasons that they were that bad last year, but obviously getting the worst QB play, having no health on the offensive line, having no health on the defense as a whole, having a coaching staff that seemingly checked out at times and during last year, in my opinion. Now, am I saying that I think Nick Sirianni is going to step in and be a great play caller right away, or I think the defender is going to be a great defensive play caller right away? I don't know. And that's kind of the fun part of this year. And that's why it's so high variance, like you said. But I really do think it's in that 7 to 10 win range is where we'll see the Eagles this year. I really, even if you want to narrow it down, I think they're 8-9 or 9-8.
You know where I go to like every single time where I'm like, I rack my head around what we're going to see from the Eagles is third down conversion percentage. Every single time I go back to that. When you look at 2017 and when the Eagles were so good, they were like literally the number 2 team in the league when it comes to third down conversion percentage. You look at Devontae Smith and his ability to just blow up people off that line of scrimmage. You look at maybe Dallas Goedert, and you look at Nick Sirianni being able to get guys, in space, get guys in position to get the ball in the hands with speed. So that's where I go. The return of the screen game. That's the reason of optimism I have for the offense. I'm sorry I'm derailing this complete podcast.
You're good. Marky Mark chimes in on YouTube and says the Eagles need to sign the cornerback Trufant, who was cut. I don't know about your guys' thoughts on that. I don't think people realize how bad Trufant was last year. I mean, he was a big name for a long time, but to me, it's not worth it to take a guy like Avonte Maddox or Zach McPherson off of the field. I don't want to go signing a lot of vets. This is a team I'm not expecting to compete, but I want to see who we've got and kind of develop those. And then we've got Justin chiming in on Facebook. He's obviously talking to not me here, but he says, "Hey, beautiful people, love your Eagles talk." Now he's talking to me, and he's excited for Devontae Smith on his fantasy team.
That's a good pick, Justin.
That was a great pick.
I want to share this, and I tweeted this the other day. The Eagles missing starters week 1 of 2020. They were missing Andre Dillard, Brandon Brooks, Lane Johnson, 3 offensive linemen, Miles Sanders, Marquise Goodwin, Alshon Jeffrey. 6 players on the offense were gone week 1. And then on the defense, they were missing 2 defensive linemen, Javon Hargrave and Derek Barnett. Their projected missing starters right now, nobody. I put Rodney McLeod in the tweet. He was activated. Now I'm not sure. Maybe he does play. But if the Eagles can stay healthy, and that's been the biggest thing for years for the Eagles, if they could just stay healthy, it obviously raises the bar for what the team could do.
The first thought I got there with you look at Carson Wentz's stats, and I don't want to derail this with Carson Wentz talk, but Carson Wentz's win percentage without Lane Johnson was nothing, absolutely nothing. And then you talk about Brandon Brooks when he's playing, of course, one of the best in the game. So I kind of brought that up when I joined. Is that at what point does it become a pattern? And at what point does Philly break this curse of injuries? And I in my head, and then in my heart, I want to try to find a neutral ground. And what I'm saying is I'm struggling to find a middle ground between those, because in my head I'm this is a pattern. We're going to get injuries on the offensive line. We're going to get injuries on that defensive line eventually, and you saw the lack of depth this preseason where they are exposed 100%. But could this be the start of a somewhat healthy season for the Eagles? There it is.
Just
fingers crossed.
Just touching on your Lane Johnson point, I think he's obviously we're not going to sit around and have a conversation about an offensive lineman all the time. So it's always going to be under talked about. I think he's one of the most important parts of this team and one of the most important kind of question marks on this team if he stays healthy or not. And I think he's maybe due to the health issues, maybe due to other things. I think he's become underrated. I don't think he was on the top 100 list for the NFL.
That's crazy.
Which is that list is a farce anyway, most of the time. But I just think that he's kind of getting forgot about. People forget just how he's in that elite echelon of offensive tackles, in my opinion, in the NFL. And if he could stay healthy, he'll be able to show that to people.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's kick it around the NFC as a whole. And last week we did AFC over-unders. And Dives, I threw you onto the list here now since you're here with us. So
what have I done?
Gamble responsibly and don't take Dives' lines. But we're going to talk some NFC win totals and just kind of throw it around the NFC. I know Mark picked a whole season. I did as well and came up with records. And then I promptly disagreed with some of the records I came up with last week. And so we'll see it here, but Mark, I'll throw it to you first. We'll just start at the top. So Arizona, now these lines are a couple days old because I pulled them earlier in the week, but at the time I pulled it, Arizona's win total was set at 8.5 points by 8.5 wins by Bet Online. So Mark, how do you feel about that? You going over or under on the Cardinals?
I'm going under, and it has a lot less to do with the Arizona Cardinals than it does to do with the division that they play in when you have the Rams, the 49ers, and the Seahawks, who all have Super Bowl aspirations, let alone playoff aspirations, right there in their division. Arizona is very clearly the fourth team to me. Maybe that'd be different if they didn't have Cliff Kingsbury at head coach and they had a legitimate head coach who wasn't fired by Texas Tech 6 months before he was hired as an NFL head coach. But yeah, I think Cliff Kingsbury's really holding back Arizona, and so is that division. So I'm comfortably saying under. One of my favorite unders this year.
So I actually came in at the over on this. I picked my whole season, and I did something. I came up with results something that's never happened before, and it was every team in the NFC West making the playoffs. And so I ended up with the Cardinals at 11-6, finishing last place in their division. And making the playoffs for that last wild card spot. I mean, they added J.J. Watt. They added A.J. Green, who I don't know how much he has left in the tank. They drafted Zaven Collins, who was a guy I really liked. I think he's an immediate impact player for them. I like what the team has, and I believe in everything except what you mentioned. I don't really believe in Cliff Kingsbury, and it's a very difficult division. But I think they're an exciting team to watch, and I'm taking the over on them.
I'll go under. Arizona, just their history-wise, like this is a team that they're going to disappoint. And by the way, do not at all believe what I say when it comes to over-unders on this. I live in my Philly sports bubble. I'm proud of it. I'm just here for the ride, baby.
All right. So then we go down to Atlanta. Atlanta's win total is set at 7.5. Mark, what say you?
Well, after Atlanta starts 0-1, they're going to have to win 8 games to go over that total after that. But I have you'll notice a pattern in the NFC South when we get to some of the other teams. I have the Falcons at 7-10, where I also have the Cardinals. So I'm going under, just barely under. But it's hard for me to get too excited about this Falcons defense. I know that. I know that Arthur Smith is a good addition. He might be able to change some things with the offense. Obviously, they added Kyle Pitts while losing Julio Jones. There's a lot to be excited about on the offensive side of the ball. That defense is bad. So I'm going with the under.
Yeah, when I picked it, I came out at 5-12 for them. With Julio Jones, 8 wins is reachable. Without Julio, I just don't have the confidence in that team. I mean, they got Kyle Pitts, but as much as people expect him to set the league on fire, rookie tight ends usually take a little while to get going. And so I don't expect him to come in and just replace Julio Jones' production. I mean, that'd be an absurd expectation. And so I'm pretty comfortably taking the under on Atlanta.
Under Dean Pease, first-year defensive coordinator. I've kind of looked into Atlanta as the Eagles get ready for them. Offensively, that Matt Ryan, Kyle Pitts connection, Calvin Ridley connection is going to be really fun. But defensively, they don't have really much to offer on the defensive line and further. So for me, definitely under.
All right. So we're all in agreement, which means nothing. But maybe it does. Okay, going on to Chicago. Chicago is set at 7.5.
I think we're skipping one. We're skipping Carolina.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, my bad. Carolina is also set at 7.5. Everybody's set at 7.5. So the Panthers are at 7.5. What do you have there, Mark?
I'm same record here. I'm going 7-10 again. 3 straight 7-10 teams. So I'm going under. One of Atlanta, Carolina, or New Orleans is probably going to be good as that second team in the NFC South, but I have them all at 7-10. So I don't believe in any of them. They're all like Atlanta's a defense away from me believing in them. Carolina is like a quarterback that isn't my least favorite quarterback in the National Football League away from me believing in them. And then New Orleans is like, a skill position player away from being in the discussion. So I think that they all have their issues. They all could be exciting, but I'm going under on all three of them. Carolina is, Sam Darnold, enough said for me.
Yeah, they've been under 7 wins for the last 5 seasons. Sam Darnold's not going to help them rebound. I came up with 6-11, and yeah, I'd take the under on them as well.
Going under, my heart says Matt Rule over. Love my Temple guy there, Matt Rule. But you look at that road schedule there at the end of the season, there's no way they're going over 7.5.
All right, so now moving on to Chicago, who is also at 7.5. Mark, tell me you don't have them at 7-10 as well.
No, I have them at 9-8. I have them at an over. I think they sneak into the playoffs as the last wild card. I'm hoping that Justin Fields gets on the field sooner rather than later. But if he doesn't, that probably means that Andy Dalton's overachieving and the Bears are overachieving and winning games. So this is actually one of my favorite futures in general. I have the Bears on the over, and I have a future on them to make the playoffs. I believe at plus 300 or plus 340. I think the Bears get a lot of crap for the last couple of years. I think people think Matt Nagy's an idiot. They've won 12 8-8 games in the last 3 years with Mitch Trubisky at quarterback. So I think they have a bit of a better roster than people are giving them credit for.
There is a reason that people think Matt Nagy is an idiot. It's because he's an idiot. And I'm going to talk about that some more in my final thoughts later, so I won't get into it here. But we couldn't be more apart on that one. I actually had the Bears finishing at 3-14.
Wow.
Very, very down on this team. With Andy Dalton starting, with Matt Nagy coaching this team, I don't think it's going anywhere. I mean, Justin Fields is the X factor. He's clearly a better quarterback than Andy Dalton, but they're keeping him off the field. I don't know how long they keep him off the field. If they put him in and he lights it up, this obviously changes. But going off the information we have right now, I couldn't be more out on this team.
I mean, you guys just touched on it. Justin Fields is 100% everything. So 7.5 is a really good number. That's a really tough, because I feel like Chicago's always like 8 wins. They're always an 8-win team. I'll go slightly over.
All right. So every time Mark and I have disagreed, Dibes has sided with Mark.
Ooh.
So I'm about to kick him off this podcast. So let's go on down to Dallas.
I mean,
we can all agree that we dislike, but Dallas's win total is set at 9 wins. Mark, what do you have?
This is another one of my favorite unders on the board. I think that I have a ton of problems with this Dallas defense. I talked about it a ton ad nauseum with Parsons as the pick that a lot of people are excited about. Hard Knocks is pushing Parsons like he's going to be the next face of the league. And I know that people are really excited. I never really got the fit with Dallas, who needs people who can cover, which he barely did in college. So I still don't think that Dallas has solved their coverage issues. And I think that they're the third best team in the NFC East. So I'm comfortably under at 7-10.
So this is one of those where I disagreed with myself. So I did my season predictions. I picked all the games, and I had Dallas come out at 10-7. And yet I'm still taking the under here. I mean, they've been at 9 or less 3 of the last 4 years. Now Dak has all that weird injury stuff going on. Maybe that's overblown. Maybe he plays next Thursday night and plays just fine. I don't know, but even if he does that, they don't have a defense. I don't believe in Mike McCarthy. I don't believe in the defense. Now I have questions about the one thing they had going for them, which was Dak Prescott and the offense. And so although my prediction came out to 10-7, if I'm betting this, I'm betting the under, because I think it's more likely that the wheels fall off in Dallas than that the team makes a playoff run.
It comes down to defense and then injuries, right? So as an Eagles fan, it's kind of ironic. I will say under for Dallas, because I do think the Redskins are the best team in this division.
The who?
the Reds. Sorry,
we're gonna have to kick Dives out of the podcast. He's canceled now. talking about my high school mascot. Oh.
All right. So then on to the Motor City, we have Detroit set at 4.5. Mark, what do you have?
My take on this is that if you bet on the Detroit Lions over/under win total, you should call 1-800-GAMBLER because you have a problem. 4.5. I don't know where they're going to end up. I had them at 4 wins, so I'm going under. But it's 4.5 games. You don't bet on this. It could go either way pretty easily.
Yeah, I had them at 1-16. Jared Goff is their quarterback. He's not any good. Here's a fun fact for you. Out of all the receivers on their roster, what do you think the most receiving yards any of them have ever had in a season is? Any guesses?
No.
I don't know.
They don't have a single receiver that has ever had a 700-yard season. Now, let's look at their running back room. They don't have a single running back that has ever had a 600-yard rushing season. So you're taking those weapons and giving them to a bad quarterback. I just don't see it. I think this team is going to be terrible. I think they've got the number 1 pick in the draft next April.
Over Houston.
Wow.
Maybe we might have to make a wager on that.
And the fourth hardest schedule in the NFL. Under.
Houston at least has the benefit of playing in a weak division.
That's true. I don't think it'll be as weak as we talked about that though last.
Yeah, we have. I guess that's true, but I feel much more confident in the Packers and the Vikings to be good than I do any team other than the Titans in the NFC South. So, speaking of the Packers win total comes in at 10. What say you, Mark?
I think this is actually closer to 10.5. I've seen this win total at places. If you want to avoid the tie and change to 10.5, but I'm going 11, so it doesn't change it either way for me. It's right over. It's not one that I would bet. It'll probably really come down to whether or not Green Bay has the division wrapped up on if they really go for 11 wins or 12 wins, whatever. So I went with 11. That's just how it broke out for me. But this is one I wouldn't touch.
Yeah, it's one of those. Like you said, I wouldn't want to bet on the 3-4 games, the under on those, because, I mean, anything can happen. And I wouldn't really want to bet on many double-digit win totals either on the over because you get into weird things with resting starters. But I had the Packers at 13-4 when I picked it. I think they're going to be pretty good. I think they're going to win their division. And now that Rodgers is back in the fold, now the wheels could come off because there's still trouble brewing there if they hit a rough patch. But right now, based on what we know, I think they hit the over.
I'm going to go under. I don't know what to expect from Aaron Rodgers. I do think that there could be a game or two where they rest him just for the playoffs. I'm going to go under, depending on how the rest of the NFC goes. I think Aaron Rodgers might not play a full season.
All right. So to Los Angeles, where the Rams are set at 10.5 wins. Mark, what do you have?
This is my Super Bowl pick. This is the team I have winning the Super Bowl, and I have them taking the NFC East, winning 12 games, or NFC West, I should say, winning 12 games. So over. I love what the Rams have going on in terms of having Aaron Donald on the line and then Jalen Ramsey at corner. I think when you have two bookend stars at those important positions, it really allows the rest of that defense to kind of fill in as needed and kind of do some grunt work and not be quite as important. I don't think you have to spend as much money on those pieces when you have a guy like Aaron Donald and a guy like Jalen Ramsey. And when you add Matthew Stafford instead of Jared Goff, I'm not even the biggest Matthew Stafford guy. I've probably been accused of being a Stafford hater before, but there's no argument that there's a massive, massive upgrade from Goff to Stafford.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a phenomenal defense. Stafford is a definite upgrade. He finally gets a chance to be on a good team with a good coach. And they added Djax, who should be really good for one long touchdown week 1 before he gets hurt for the year. So I have him at 11-6, and I've got the over as well.
I'm going under. I'm going to under Matthew Stafford. I'm not a buyer in Matthew Stafford. Great stat guy. I don't see like this looks like that prototypical great regular season team, regular season team, and then nothing in the playoffs.
All right, moving on to Minnesota. Minnesota is set at 9, and I hate it when they're set at even numbers like that. But Mark, what do you have?
Yeah, I've seen this at 8.5 if you want to change it, but I'm going under. I have 8 and 9. So I think this is another one that I wouldn't want to bet on. I think this is going to be kind of like the Eagles, a team within that 7 to 10 win range. Yeah. And it probably depends on Kirk Cousins, honestly. It probably depends on what Kirk Cousins shows up. Is it, Monday Night Football Kirk Cousins, or is it 1 o'clock against the Bengals when no one's paying attention to Kirk Cousins that passes for 5 touchdowns and 300 yards? So, yeah, he's an ultimate mystery. He's like the quarterback that was built for Twitter because it's just like you can make your argument based on whatever you want to make it on with Kirk Cousins. You can take either side, but I'm going under just because I do think there probably is potential for the wheels to fall off. Maybe they bring in Kellen Mond. Who knows? I'm going under just barely.
I had them fit at 9 and 8. And so I hate that 9 line, but given the ignorance of their quarterback room when it comes to COVID, I'm going to take the under. I mean, their quarterback and their backup are both unvaccinated. And I mean, the Vikings are going to roll out a punter playing quarterback at some point this season. It's going to happen. And so I just don't know how you can, have any confidence in that, plexiglass or not. I'm going to take the under there. Justin, I know 9 is not an even number. I mean, it's not set on a half a game.
Yeah, give me the under on that one. Like Shane said, like 7-8 wins looks perfect for Minnesota. Give me the under.
All right, so New Orleans is set at 9 wins. Again, another one that's not on the half game. But Mark, what do you think about the Saints this year?
I'm going under. This is the highest variance team in the NFL, in my opinion. I think this team could win 5 games, and I think they could win 13. Like, I legitimately could see every single outcome with the Saints, and that's mainly due to a guy like Jameis Winston, who is the ultimate wild card, and then with Sean Payton being such a great coach, even if I don't believe in the skill position talent with Michael Thomas hurt, Sean Payton is such a genius. I think he's one of the best probably 3 coaches in football. So if anyone's going to figure it out, it's going to be the Saints. Like I said, I have Carolina, Atlanta, and New Orleans all at 7 wins, but one of those teams is probably better than I think they are. If I had the gun to my head, say which one, I would say New Orleans, but I'm still going under.
Yeah, when I picked mine, I had them come in at 3 and 14. I'm pretty down on this team. Michael Thomas is hurt. He's disgruntled. I don't think he plays another snap for the Saints. Jameis Winston's the quarterback. I guess it took them long enough to decide. I don't feel confident in their skill positions. They've got a great coach, but I'm not confident in Jameis, and I'm not sure who he's throwing the ball to. And now you add in the fact that, they're going to be away from their facility for the next month with the hurricane hitting, and just with all of the transition going on, you throw that on top of it. I just think this season has a chance to really get away from them early on.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's death, taxes, and the Saints getting 10 wins every year. I'm definitely going over here. I think they'll find a way. Not saying that they're Super Bowl contenders, but I think they'll find a way to get it done.
All right. So the Giants, back to the NFC East. The Giants are set with 7 wins. What do you think here, Mark? 7 wins?
I'm going under. If you guys both know my opinions on one Daniel Jones, that pick he threw on the goal line in the preseason game. Don't know if you guys saw it on Twitter. That's like a 5-yard pass. Like he was 5 to 10 yards away, and it's like his 2 receivers were field goal uprights, and he just threw right in the middle to a Patriot. Like it was a stunningly bad throw from a man who's paid to play quarterback. So for that reason alone, I'm going under, even though they've added some talent. I just do not believe in Daniel Jones.
Yeah, they've hit 7 wins once in the last 7 years. Long live Dave Gettleman. Camp was a mess with retirements. Their offensive line is just in shambles right now. They've got one of their starters that's hurt, and he's going to try to play through a tendon injury. Not going to go well. Daniel Jones, clearly not the franchise quarterback. Saquon Barkley coming off of injury. Joe Judge is a buffoon. I mean, the only thing they have going is that maybe this defense can be decent, but decent defense can't carry that offense. I had them at 2-15. The Giants are more likely to have a top 3 pick than they are to go over 7 wins, in my opinion.
Agreed.
That's a really good number, 7. I could see them at 6-8. I'll go slightly under. Why not? Let's go slightly under.
All right. So bringing it back home to Philadelphia. Your home, not mine. The Eagles are at 6.5 wins. What do you have there, Mark?
I'm going over. I said it before. I can't see this team winning 4 or 5 games. Maybe they win 6 and really split that difference. But I feel comfortable that they are going to be one of the 2 best teams in this division with Washington. I think they're going to be around that 8-9 win marker. So I will have money on the Eagles over 6.5 wins and their odds to win the division.
Yeah, I have the Eagles at 10-7 when I did my prediction. I had them and the Cowboys both at 10-7, but the Cowboys getting the nod based on tiebreakers, which would really make a lot of Eagles fans mad. But, I mean, Quez Watkins, Devonta Smith have shown promise. We haven't seen Hurts much. There's a lot of unknowns. We won't relitigate all that, but I'll take the over. I did take the over. I've got money on the Eagles over and the Eagles to win the division. So,
Jesus Christ. Oh, man, this one's hard. This one's really hard. I'm not gonna lie, this is really hard for me. This is the separator between what your gut says and what your heart says. I think they're probably realistically in that 6 to 8 range. They definitely have potential to get like 9, 10, 11 wins. That swing potential is real, but I can't ignore a lot of the things that have hindered this team, including injuries on the offensive line, which is everything for Jalen Hurts. We saw that in the second half of a lot of games last year. So I will say a slight over, and I will say 7 to 8 wins.
All right. Moving on to San Francisco, the 49ers win total is set at 10.5 in that very difficult NFC West. What do you have, Mark?
I think the 49ers are a Super Bowl contender. I really think that that roster is probably the best. If you take out quarterback, they might have the best roster in football. My buddy Joe, Super Bowl contending team, trust Garoppolo or Lance. Kyle Shanahan will be back and hopefully actually win. He is a Falcons fan, so he of all people knows about the Kyle Shanahan choke job in the Super Bowl. Sorry for bringing that up, Joe. But I think that the Niners roster is absurd. And this quarterback situation is so interesting because I am almost entirely 1,000% of the time play the rookie, play the young guy, get him in there, get him reps. This is a weird situation because San Fran does have legitimate aspirations, and because it's not like they drafted Trey Lance because Jimmy G stinks. They drafted him because he can't stay healthy. They drafted him because they don't know if he can be the guy just health-wise. So that's why it's so weird. Usually, you're like with Dalton and Fields, everyone's kind of making fun of the Bears. Them playing Dalton over Fields is clearly stupid. But I can't say the same with Garoppolo and Lance because I think Garoppolo has proven when he's been healthy, the 49ers have won games. So it's an interesting situation. I don't necessarily know what's going to happen. Shanahan's teased a 2 QB system. I'm not a huge fan of that personally, but I can't say that this team is a worse than a 10.5 win team. I got to go 11-6, so I'm going over.
All right, I had them come in at 12-5, so I'm going to take the over as well. Injuries derailed last season, but the core of their roster and staff from the 2019 Super Bowl run is still there. They have Trey Lance in the fold now. They have insurance at the quarterback position. I mean, you can say, everybody says you got 2 quarterbacks, you've got no quarterbacks. Well, if you've got Kyle Shanahan, you might have something nobody's ever seen before. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to take the over on them. I'm pretty bullish on the 49ers this year.
My boy, one of my co-hosts is a diehard 49ers fan. Mark, you got to know him, Loretto. He's going to be joining us during our post-game show there in week 2. I'm going to say the over just to keep him sane because I know if he saw this and I put under, he'd give me a lot of shit. So, Lance, all the way Lance.
All right.
And just touching on Shane's point, I lost it. Never mind. Let's go to Seattle. I lost that completely. Went out of my brain. So let's talk about the Seahawks.
All right, let's go to Seattle. We've got 3 left here. We'll kind of.
Never mind. I have to halt it. I remembered.
Okay.
The 2 quarterbacks you said, the 2 quarterback system. A lot of people say it doesn't work, but if you have Kyle Shanahan, you might have something that we've never seen before. If there is no coach in football besides maybe Sean Payton that could come out and say, I'm running a 2 quarterback system, and I wouldn't attack them for it. Like everyone else, I would say, that's so stupid. What are you doing? Give someone the job. But because it's Kyle Shanahan, he is just an absolute genius. I have full faith that he'll figure it out. That was such an important tangent I needed to go on. So let's talk about Seahawks.
So basically what you forgot and then remembered was that I'm always right.
100%, of course.
Perfect. Okay, so we've got 3 left here. We'll rapid fire these off and get you all out of here. The Seahawks are at 9.5 wins. I'm going first. I had the Seahawks come in at 12-5 when I did my predictions. They've been at 10-plus wins 3 straight seasons, as long as Russell Wilson is under center. Yeah, you got to feel good about this team at least getting to double digits. And so to me, the Seahawks, that is an easy over, even in the division they play in at 9.5. What do you have, Mark?
I have them at 11. I have them and the 49ers at 11 wins as wild cards. I know you had all 4 making it. I had 3 teams out of the West making it, with the Rams winning the division. And I am starting to feel like, maybe Seattle is that dark horse Super Bowl contender. You look at this over under at 9.5. Vegas clearly doesn't look at them in the same, area that they look at Green Bay, the Rams, San Fran, Tampa Bay. And I think that they might be right in that conversation when you have Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Chris Carson on the offense. I know that there's plenty of issues on the O-line, as there seemingly has been for over a decade. And there's some issues on the defense. We talked about Jamal Adams in that contract before and how we're not huge fans of it. So there's a lot of concerns, but when you have Russ and when you have the skill position players that they do, I think that they still are a Super Bowl contender. So I'm going over.
All right. What do you have, Dibes?
Over. Oh, my God. It's like the Saints, death taxes and the Saints getting 10 wins, death taxes and Russell Wilson. So 100% over.
All right. Moving on to Tampa Bay, the reigning Super Bowl champions. They are at 11-5. Or excuse me, what am I doing? They are at 11.5 wins. Mark, what do you have here?
This is a really well set line. I think this is an 11 or a 12 win team. I had them at 12, probably mostly due to the nature that I didn't like anyone else in the division. Maybe if there's that second place team that can step up and be competitive in the division, this is a different conversation. But I have the Bucs at 12 wins, and they are obviously going to be a perennial Super Bowl contender as long as Tom Brady is there with that insane roster.
Got Chick saying, wow, Shane hopped on late, but all 4 NFC West team over their totals is interesting. Who is left out? Actually, with the expanded playoffs, all 4 of them made it in. The Cardinals were the last place team at 11-6 for me, but they actually still made it in, edged out the Eagles at 10-7 for a wild card. For me, for Tampa Bay, now I don't expect this to happen, but when I went through my projections, I had them come out at 17-0. I don't think they're going to go 17-0, but I would take the over here. They return every starter from their Super Bowl team, and they added other people. I mean, it's a deeper team than it was a year ago, but everyone is back. I don't know how you can doubt Brady at this point. To me, that's an easy over as they walk through that division.
Period. Next.
All right, the last one here. The Washington football team is set at 8.5. Mark, lead us off here.
This is the hardest one on the board.
This is a great number. Great number.
Yeah, I think this is the most well set line, and I feel the same way about their win total as I do with the Eagles. I think this is an 8 or a 9 win team. I'll go under just very slightly, which I'm a Chase Young guy. I think Chase Young might be the defensive player of the year this year. And I think that roster is just unbelievable with Antonio Gibson, Terry McLaurin, Logan Thomas, a great O-line. It's going to be interesting to see if Ryan Fitzpatrick can just be serviceable, but he's not. I feel like a lot of people think he's going to come in and be this game manager that steadies the ship for Washington. That's not really the type of quarterback he is. He's a home run, big hitting quarterback where he throws it deep, he lets it fly. I don't know if that's what this offense needs. So it'll be interesting. I'm going very slightly under at 8 wins, and I'll probably regret that, but 8 and 9.
Ives, what do you have?
I'm going over. I'm going to go over here. I think this is the best team in the division. Make sure no one records this.
This is the clip that's going out on Twitter later.
I do think that this is the team that, and I do believe in that quarterback, Mark. I disagree with that. I think the Washington football team have the front seven to really take this division. So for sure. I'm definitely over here. I see them as a 9-10 win team at the end of this season.
I had them come in at 9 and 8, so I would take the over there. They've got a Super Bowl caliber defense. They just need the quarterback. I'm not a Ryan Fitzpatrick guy, but I think he gives them the juice to get to 9 wins. I mean, he's going to have his 5 touchdown game. He's going to have his 4 interception game. Mm-hmm. And they might come back-to-back weeks for no conceivable reason. But I think when you've got a defense that good and you've got a veteran quarterback who's stuck in the league long in so many different systems, I find it hard to pick the under there.
I might be – I'm sorry.
I was just saying Boston Scott is to the New York Giants as Fitzpatrick is to Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah.
I almost would be more optimistic about Washington, and I think I would lock them in as my pick if Taylor Heineke was a starting quarterback. I was so impressed last year against Tampa Bay in that playoff game. Like, I went in expecting them to get killed, and he was so impressive. He had so much moxie, he had so much mobility. I've said this a million times, I feel like, on a million different podcasts this offseason. I think we will see Heineke at some point this year, whether that be a Fitzpatrick injury or one of those 4 interception games that Shane mentioned that he does seem to have every spot he stops at. I think we will see Heineke at some point, and I think he could impress.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that's going to do it for our NFC over and unders. Final thoughts. Dibes, lead us off. You got any final thoughts?
No, man, I'm excited. I'm all footballed up. We're roughly a couple weeks away from Eagles season. Expect a ton of video breakdowns coming in the very near future when this season starts. I'll be providing writing content, a lot of video content. Party on Broad will be ripping and roaring, all that kind of stuff. But if you don't love the Eagles, you can watch me on, giving monsters at work content over at Disney Plus, where we have a good time.
All right, awesome. Mark, any final thoughts for you?
Yeah, I mentioned it at the top of the show. I know this is an NFL show mainly, but college football starting this weekend.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
NFL draft prep starts tomorrow with there's a ton of Thursday games. I know Ohio State plays, and there's some games on Friday. Obviously, a full slate on Saturday. I have to wait all the way until Sunday to see my Notre Dame Fighting Irish play. It's unbelievable. They scheduled 1 game for Sunday night. I have to wait for Notre Dame. But what's that, Dives?
I will be providing a ton of NFL draft content for the foreseeable future. I was joking around with the Monsters Inc. Sure, I will though. I love that stuff. But I will be doing I am 100% in on that 2022 Eagles draft. So that is going to be all week, all the time until next June.
Yeah, it's Absolutely. I'm excited though. College football. I'm a college football guy. It's gonna be a ton of good games on this weekend. Gambling is back. I don't gamble. I can't keep my excitement inside of me. I'm so sick of baseball. I need a new sport.
I was deep diving on Stingley, and then I then watched all these videos on Devontae Smith versus Derek Stingley, and oh my god, man! That was only the catapult to getting me so excited for this Eagles season.
I will say, don't write off Stingley because of some of the bad tape last year. They had a D coordinator at LSU named Bo Pelini who's stuck in the 1980s. He was running a crazy scheme where he wasn't able to cover guys man to man. Derek Stingley's going to be just fine this year. That guy's going to be a top 5 pick and a stud next year, hopefully on the Philadelphia Eagles.
All right, we'll see. We'll keep our fingers crossed. My final thought, my parting shot goes out to Matt Nagy, who said this week, this offense takes a few years to get going. We saw that in Kansas City, and here it took a few years. The Chicago Bears have not had an offense in the top 2/3 of the league in the last 2 years. You don't have an offense. You have no idea how to evaluate talent if you were starting Andy Dalton. Stop talking about what you did in Kansas City while Andy Reid was calling the plays. Nobody cares what you did 4 years ago. If your offense truly takes 2 to 3 years to get going, how about you start the quarterback that'll be here for 2 to 3 years? So, Matt Nagy, word of advice, just play Justin Fields.
Seriously.
So that's all we've got for you tonight. Thank you guys for joining us for episode number 6 of Chalk Talk. If you enjoy what you heard here on the show, and we know that you do, be sure you smash that subscribe button here on YouTube so you don't miss the next episode. Drop us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate it. You can follow all of us on Twitter. I'm at @halfandhalf_TPL. Mark is at Mark Henry Jr. Dibes is at Mr. Crockpot. You can follow Mark's Tough Cover podcast. Dibes is on Party on Broad. You can catch all of our work. It all goes onto YouTube. So we are excited to provide content for you guys through another great football season. And so from me, from Mark, from Dibes, from the Painted Lines, we will see you guys next time.